Welcome back, everyone. This will be part 3 of the Slave Trade Acts that we've been going over. We've gone over 1794, 1800, and the Slave Trade Acts of 1803. And in those, Congress didn't stop the slave trade itself, but what they were doing was narrowing the door so that only a few slaves could get through at one time. And they had stiff penalties for people violating the acts or importing slaves that weren't defined in their terms. So it could be a penalty of $200 per slave that you had on board. You could have a $2,000 fine. You could face jail time, and even your ship and the contents of your ship could be confiscated. I want to read the Slave Trade Act of 1807, just the first section, to you so that you guys can see what it was talking about. And the title of it is An Act to Prohibit the Importation of Slaves into any port or place within the jurisdiction of the United States from and after the first day of January in the year of our Lord 1808. And the first section says, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled that from and after the first day of January 1808, it shall not be lawful to import or bring into the United States or the territories thereof from any foreign kingdom, place, or country any Negro, mulatto, or person of color with intent to hold, sell, or dispose of such Negro, mulatto, or person of color as a slave or to be held to service or labor. So with this act, the slave trade is now officially ended, well, legally and on paper. Whether or not it was enforced, that would be a different debate for another day. But this just shows that Congress has now ended the slave trade of slaves coming from any other country or region into the United States altogether. And with all of this, one of the questions that you could ask is, well, why were they trying to prohibit the slave trade? And going back to the Constitution, where they gave the importation of slaves or people, they gave 20 years for the states to do it, and they wouldn't stop it. Why would they try to stop the slave trade anyway when slavery is so vital to America and America's economy? And I won't answer that question in this video, but what I want to do is kind of shift the focus of what we think about slaves or slavery. And we look at it from the standpoint of Africans being brought over to the Americas, but what was going on here before Europeans got here, that information or that history is kind of vague, and the average American doesn't know too much about I'll call them the native nations that were already here. And with that piece of information that's kind of wiped or hidden, a lot of people don't know, well, what was actually going on in even the 1500s and 1600s when Europeans were here. So one of the things that I want to look at is a popular history of the United States of America by John Clark Redpath. And in that, he named two different groups of Native Americans, and he gave the appearance of one of those groups. And I want to read that to you guys and kind of go through it. Here's what Redpath had to say about some of the groups. In personal appearance, the Indians were strongly marked. In stature, they were nearly all below the average of Europeans. The Eskimo are rarely 5 feet high, but are generally thick-set and heavy. The Algonquins, which is another race, are taller and lighter in build. A straight and agile race, lean and swift of foot, eyes jet black and sunken, hair black and straight, beard black and scant. And here's his description of their skin tone. Skin, copper colored, a reddish black, cinnamon hued, brown, and they also had high cheekbones. And these are only two of the groups. I'll call them groups of Native Americans, and there are some that we know them as the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, Cherokee. It would be beneficial to look at those histories of those people, and if we could get a description of how they look, compare it to what we know of now or what we think of today as what Native Americans are or what they look like, it would be very beneficial to go back and compare what was written about them then to what we think we know about them now, and compare to see if those two things match or is something different, and to kind of reshift or refocus to see what the actual truth is when it comes to the Americas, and not just Americas, Black history altogether. And this is the end of this video. Like I said, I wanted it to be a short video, but I still want to stay with the theme of American history or Black American history and go through it a little more. There's tons of it that I think the average person doesn't really study or maybe doesn't know that I wanted to bring to light. So we will still stick to the theme of Black history. So I'll see you all in the next video.